the more we and so I decided that we have this meeting. Let's move faster so that we finish on time. So media institutions and ownership is our sixth topic, and our ELOs, our expected learning outcomes, explain media ownership models and their implications on the industry, examine the legal and policy tools used by governments and regulatory bodies to control media content, analyze content regulation and policy with reference to contemporary experience, and evaluate traditional and postmodern gatekeeping theories and their relevance. So those are our major learning outcomes for this particular topic. So we now move on to our introduction. Yeah, so media is a very influential aspect of society because of control of information. Information determines a lot. It affects all the organs of society. Like when you look at even politics, politics is affected by information. When the voters are well informed, they will affect the outcome of election. And that is why the government is very, very sensitive when it comes to media. That's why media has been regulated and it continues to be regulated because of its influential role in the society. It can shape public opinion. It can change many things when it can educate. Through media, we can get educated. It can help in controlling pandemics and the diseases because of its influence. So according to NORM 2014, the ownership of media is a controversial subject in contemporary society because information has great influence on the political and social organization. Much as populations in the West have no issues with many industry owners, they single out influential media owners as more disastrous to their societies because they influence voting and other aspects of people's lives, including materialism, hedonism, and drug addictions. So according to NORM, therefore, media controls even the health of people. People are getting addicted to phones just because of the content on those particular phones. People are getting addicted to drugs just because of the content that is found on the media channels. And even the kind of philosophies that people entertain, like materialism or idealism, all these philosophies are shaped by media. Because when you portray, for example, wealth as a symbol or as a sign of success, then the young people will follow that. And the ideology that you will shape in their minds is determined by what you have aired on the media channels. So government ownership of certain sectors, such as coal in England, has enabled equitable distribution of resources. And that's why government strives to also have a stake in media so that there is equitable sharing of information. If we just leave it to certain private industries, they will control the conversation and push an agenda which may not be equitable to all facets of society. And that is why media control and regulation now comes in. So there are several models, and the first one is individual ownership. So these are entrepreneurial citizens with commercial interests who may venture into media ownership. Marendia 2022 observes that private media ownership is prevalent in capitalistic nations such as United States, European nations, and Africa. So they believe in the principles of ownership may have a great influence on the news. Yeah, so individuals who are entrepreneurial may come up and form companies to own media houses. And they therefore affect information. They affect information. Some of them even merge and they want to promote a certain ideology. And as Marendia says, this is common in capitalistic societies. In countries like China and Cuba, individual ownership is forbidden because they believe that the government is for the people, and because the government belongs to the people, the basic factors of production are therefore controlled by the people, and the government is for the people. So the government, basically in communistic nations, the government controls the 5 factors of production: land, labor, entrepreneurship, and all that. And so in communistic states, like China and Cuba, Russia collapsed. I think Venezuela could also be there. I don't know if Venezuela is still there. It's still communistic. In most communistic nations, media are owned by the government because they believe the government is for the people. Yeah. But in capitalistic nations like Kenya, that's in Africa, and also United States, individuals can own media houses and control the conversations. So an important feature of this model is that it is primarily profit driven, as the media outlets are owned by individuals. Yeah, so it is profit driven because individuals want to make money through advertisements and other means. As a result, content decisions are often influenced by market demands, audience ratings, advertising revenue, very important, rather than public service goals. So for individual ownership, the public good does not matter. It is profit driven. So there is concentration of ownership. There's also what we call concentration of ownership, where a small number of people, companies, or people come together. For example, if KTN feels that it is going down, it can merge itself with the MediaMax. That's what we are calling concentration of ownership. So this can lead to homogenization of content, and reduction of diverse perspectives. For example, the rate at which Royal Media, for example, owns so many radio stations and TVs, in most, okay, this is what we are saying, such kind of ownership can lead to what? Homogenization. It can lead to a homogeneous perspective where it is royal media as a ideology that dominates media. And that is what most countries grapple with. They do not want that. They want to have a case where we have as different, as many, we need to have many channels owned by different people so that we have heterogeneity of perspectives. So private media ownership operates with a high degree of editorial independence from direct government control, and that is a merit. That is an advantage because the editorial houses are very independent and they are free from a lot of government control, unless now the government comes in with what? With media policies and laws to try and limit their independence, and so on. So private ownership encourages competition. Another merit is that it encourages competition to drive innovation and responsiveness to consumer preferences. Maybe if somebody can, I don't know if you people remember, during the one-party system of government, there was only one media house, and that was KBC. I remember very, very clearly. And every time they went to, to broadcast the news, they'll always begin by telling us where the president is, where the president has gone, and every session I would begin with His Excellency President Daniel Arap Moi. Today he was in a Sunday service and all that. And because of that, there were very few jobs. Again, there were very few jobs in media, very few jobs in journalism. Because those days, KBC was the only employer and it controlled all media. But after 1992, in fact, that's when Royal Media came up. We only knew Radio Citizen. We just knew Radio Citizen. And I remember, was it Mburu? There's somebody Mburu who used to have a program in Radio Citizen, and he would really criticize the government. In fact, we were surprised that the government would be criticized. Before that, nobody would criticize the government. But that kind of boom led to a lot of developments. And this is because of competition. The private sector now brought a lot of competition. And now you can see that KBC is nowhere. KBC is nowhere. The best media stations are actually private because of competition. And even as the people celebrate the cause, as people remember, let me say, as people remember Oginga Odinga and Raila Odinga and all that. Yeah, these are some of the gains that the struggle for multipartyism led by people like Kenneth Batiba, Charles Rubia. There was also Raila Odinga, Martin Shikuku, and others. They really fought for a free media, and it has brought development. It has brought development because now we have better media companies and doing high quality work, more independent from government control, which has also created more jobs for the media fraternity. Then we have government ownership. So governments, whether civilian or military, often control media outlets, particularly radio and television, to achieve political goals. And we cannot just stop there. Looking at what happened in 2024 with the Gen Z, revolt and all that, you can see how the government also came in to control even social media because media has to do with what? Or maybe if I may ask, why do you think the government is interested in controlling media? Maybe let me just hear somebody unmute. Why do you think the government is interested in controlling media? Why do you think the government is interested in controlling media? Why do you think the government is interested in controlling media? Somebody say something. Somebody to say something. Yeah. Faith.
Because,
Natalia, you want to say something?
because media plays a very big role in shaping opinions of the public and also influencing political outcomes.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It shapes public opinion. Um, and it also educates, depending on of course, um, depending on the content. Let me say, depending on the content. Depending on the content, which is like nowadays, even just private channels, they whether they are political, whether they are religious, um, like nowadays, even if somebody does not go to church, like for us Christians, even if you don't have time to go to church, you can just go to there's churches nowadays have televisions, others have YouTube channels where they educate a lot. And you'll find the people conversing like now everybody's just talking about the state burial. You may think that they were in Bondo, but they were not there. It's just because of media. We saw everything, because of television, we saw everything that happened, the speeches that were given, and they are now recorded on YouTube. You can go there and still watch. So media plays a very important part, and to a great extent, and that's why the government, has to control it. The government has to control it. Um, of course, we talk about press freedom, but we can talk about absolute freedom because if it's absolute, again, it can cause harm. I agree with the government to some extent. We cannot just leave anything to go on air. And even you as media students, I think you need to know that. Don't just publish anything. Yeah, let's publish things that can that are valuable. We should not publish information that can incite the public. Because at the end of the day, when people die, morally, it is not morally right when you incite people to die and then you are safe. So incitements and misinformation, we'll talk about that. I think it must be session 9. It must be session 9 when we will talk about that. So consequently, state-owned media institutions are established, staffed, and regulated directly by the government. So this was prevalent model across autocratic and communist regimes in China, Russia, DRC, North Korea, and Nigeria in the 90s. So autocracy controls, it maintains an iron hand on media because most dictators, they are paranoid. Yeah, most dictators suffer from paranoia. They just fear that somebody will overthrow them. Dictators don't like being criticized because most of them are sick. They suffer from a condition called one is called narcissistic personality disorder. Very narcissistic. It's called self-worship, eh? And so because they think they are perfect, they cannot imagine that someone can criticize them. And so because of that, they maintain a tight control on the media, and China is one of them. They are a one-party state, Communist Party of China, and it maintains it's very high-handed. So they control completely China. Even Facebook is not there. So they have their own. I think they have their own. And then, so they are very, very autocratic. And then North Korea is another one. And that's why in Kenya, people are getting concerned with out of control of media because it was part of the one-party state. Yeah, I remember even in the morning, instead of singing just after the national anthem, there are songs that will praise Moi. Oh, KANU yajenga nchi. Hiyo ni KANU. Alafu tawala Kenya, tawala, tawala Kenya, tawala. And through that, they try to indoctrinate people into the one party, into the philosophy of the one party state, the philosophy of the one party state, and all that. So Marindi observes that prior to 1992, broadcasting stations in Nigeria were exclusively owned by the state and federal government. So whenever we have a lot of domination from the state in media ownership, it is actually an aspect of autocracy. It is an aspect of autocracy. Because in Kenya, like after now, the advent of multipartism, we experienced a lot of private ownership, which created jobs, and poverty went down. The economy grew. The economy really grew. If there's an area Kibaki did very well, yeah, Kibaki policies allowed people to speak, and as the people now, information also moved into the public space. Media houses really gained, and as I've said, that's when we saw MediaMax. That's when we saw Royal Media coming up, and the journalists did very well. They were very happy. People would have programs where they would criticize the government, and they would be listened to. Newspapers, they grew. They had more readers. People read more newspapers because so democracy has its advantages. It also enables the flow of information, and with more flow of information, we also have economic gains because journalists and people in the arts, they will be free to express themselves. Even for us as writers, we can write criticizing the government without being arrested, and because of that, we are able also to nurture our careers, in writing. So the main advantage of public media ownership is that it is public service oriented. Yeah, they are interested in serving the public, and they can have programs where they educate the public and the citizenry because they are not just interested in a profit. So they can have programs where they educate the public. But with private ownership, they are more focused on what? On profits. Then you have government-private partnership. So the government can collaborate with business people in the private sector to own media houses. Again, that is Maredia 2022. Media ownership, media owned through partnership between government and private sector has capability to negotiate the public interest characteristic of state-owned media with the efficiency, innovation, and capital flow from the private sector. So such a media house will both serve the public and it also have a lot of efficiency and innovation, which is typical of the private sector. So this model will heighten public service delivery by harmonizing the merits of the two. So the KBC, for example, is a state broadcaster, but has engaged in various partnerships with the private media entities and advertisers for content creation and signal distribution. Yeah. So much as it's a government-owned, it has also partners to enable it serve the public and make profits so that is it. What are the disadvantages of this one? The risk of political interference. Whenever there's government and public, a partnership, sometimes the government will come in and interfere. It will interfere because it has shares. Like ABC has more shares. So if the private sector comes up with a policy that may criticize the ruling party, they may interfere. Then we have lengthy and complex agreements. Sometimes to sign an agreement, it takes very long. Now, the second aspect of this topic is media regulation policies. So as we said, media has to be regulated because of the information power. Information is powerful and we cannot just leave it. Like if you discover something, like now, if you people just discover a new weapon which is stronger than the atomic bomb, a nuclear bomb, let me tell you, you will become a government property. They will come for you, because you have new knowledge. Which can threaten power balance in the world. You will be taken and guarded very secretly. Your designs, you'll have to swear on oath that your information cannot be leaked to someone else. And you will become a very, very important person to be. So information is power. And so because of this, information is usually regulated by a number of policies. Number one, media ownership and cross-ownership rules. So these rules here determine who can own media and how many they can control it. So not anybody can just own media. Not anybody can own a media house. Like there's a certain pastor in Kenya, I don't want to mention his name. I think he's a cleric. Yeah, he wanted to start a television, and the government refused to give him permission. So when I did my own research, I was told because he's a migrant. Today he's in Kenya. Next week he's in Brazil. He does not have a certain base. So the government wondered if we give this person authority to own a television, what if he incites people and then goes to Brazil? What will happen? So not anybody can own a media house. Yeah. But what of now the current information age? Of course, this is traditional. This is how it used to be. But now look at what is happening. Yeah. I just took 5 minutes to start my YouTube channel. 5 minutes to start my YouTube channel. So now, now, what is the future of these policies? What's the future of these policies with the postmodern information age? Yeah, where you can just sit in your bedroom and you start your YouTube channel and you start airing. So the primary goal of this particular policy is to prevent monopolies and the concentration of media power. So the government will not allow you, for example, if they hear that MediaMax wants to join Royal Media, they will not allow that. Because at the end of the day, the one with more shares will start monopolizing the conversation. So they also want diversity. So they will not want just all the media houses in Kenya, all the companies to merge into one. The one with more shares will do what? Will monopolize the conversation and their ideology. Their ideology will dominate. And so media ownership and cross-ownership rules prevent that. Number two, licensing and spectrum allocation. So for terrestrial broadcasting, yeah, those like radio and television, they have satellites in the space. That's what we are calling terrestrial. They have satellites in the space. The medium relies on electromagnetic spectrum. And so these are very important resource. And so the government will control access to this resource, yeah, because which is actually a very powerful regulation. So licensing laws mandate that any broadcaster must apply and be granted the license to operate a specific frequency within a defined geographical area. So they must do that, and then they have some regulations, like number three, content regulation. Yeah. They will now also regulate the content. So there are policies that restrict on the material that can be broadcast. Yeah. For example, we will not have content that affects public morality. Public morality. Yeah, like adult entertainment. If you have a lot of adult entertainment, you cannot just broadcast it anytime. I think most of you remember Ezekiel. He was called Dr. Ezekiel. He used to complain so much about adult content, which affects children during the day. So government also regulates the content. But now what I'm asking, yeah, for example, if you just have a YouTube channel, um, or you have or Facebook, you can use even Facebook, you go live. Sometimes you can air anything. Like Facebook is totally unable to control anything. Like there was some years, especially during COVID, there was a lot of adult content, on Facebook, but they don't do anything. But at least mainstream media, there are regulations that will help. There are regulations that will help. And then universal service obligations. These are policy designed to ensure that essential communication services and often a baseline level of information access are available to all citizens, regardless of their geographic location and economic status. The government may impose a must-carry rule on our cable or satellite providers enforcing certain public broadcast or educational channels. So they actually compel the institution to ensure that at least 20% of its content is educational, yeah, or is serving the public, not just advertisements and all that. Yeah. That is why we'll find even in Citizen, sometimes you'll find very educative programs, or KTN, for that matter. Then competition and antitrust laws. So this is an aspect of economic regulation where media ownership rules focus on market behavior to prevent anti-competitive practices that could harm consumers and smaller players. So they allow regulatory bodies, these rules here, to investigate and block media mergers, and acquisitions that are deemed to get a dominant market position. So we do not want mergers that will dominate, mergers that will dominate. Like I think was it the US where there was Google? Google was really taken to court because it was favoring itself. Was it Google and Apple or whatever? Yeah, so that you should not take advantage of your dominance to favor yourself. To favor yourself. Actually, it's also conflict of interest in a way. So the government will try to ensure that there is no one dominant player who wants to, put down others. To put down others. And even when you are referring to others, even in advertisements or whatever, you don't mention their name, you can only suggest. If you mention KTN versus Citizen or whatever, you will be sued because we want fair competition. We do not want some dominant voice, some dominant media house to dominate the conversation. So navigating the digital political nexus in Kenya, let's look at Kenya a bit. So in Kenya, the relevance of media regulation is acute due to the intersection of political sensitivity, ethnic diversity, and high digital penetration. So, and you saw what happened in 2024 and even this year, 2025. Yeah, people posting pictures and ending up in the hands of the police and all that. So there's a lot of digital penetration in Kenya, and even with AI, people coming up with funny pictures that portray leaders in a certain way. And so Rutenberg and Sugo, it must be 2022, sorry, demonstrate how social media has affected electoral politics in Kenya, which calls for regulation. The regulation is meant to achieve the following. So maybe before we look at Sugo, what do you think? Do you think social media should be regulated? Let me hear from you a bit. Do you think social media should be regulated and why? Hmm? And why? And here we now come again to what Plato and Aristotle said. Plato and Aristotle in week 1. So let me hear from some of you, at least 2 people. What do you think? Do you think uh, social media should be regulated? Do you think social media should be regulated? Can I unmute? Do you think social media should be regulated? Eugenia? Eugenia?
Yes, I think it should be regulated to some extent because the rise of cyberbullying, where people take into their hands to label others unprofessionally, and because they think there's no one who's going to follow up on them, so they go ahead and even I think so many people have even taken their life because of cyberbullying.
So Eugenia says cyberbullying calls for the authorities' attention. Sarah? Sarah, what do you think?
I think social media should be regulated. One, because everyone is using social media. We are in an era where kids have phones, and there's no limit. There's no knowing uh, at what age will a parent give their child access to a device that they can access social media with. So social media should be regulated so that uh, we can protect the innocence of the young kids, and also also because with the rising amount of things that are happening on social media, it is some things are not okay to just be put out there. Today I read something that said it is some people's complaints will be very light because of the things that they said that they shouldn't have said. Because the social media has become like a place where everyone just pours out whatever and everything without caring about how that is going to affect anyone else. And to some extent, the things that they let out are disturbing. So yeah, social media should have some regulation to it.
Yeah, and also when you look at the audience, as Sarah says, almost everybody is using social media. So you can you discover that very many people are there. And yet sometimes when you go there, the content you find, instead of finding something encouraging, um, sometimes you find very, very negative information, tags, and even adult content. For example, adult content. One time I complained to Facebook, but then they just say if you don't like it, they just told me if you don't like it, just scroll. Of course, nowadays at least they have tried. When you click on not interested, that picture will disappear, which is actually better. Yeah, so the content there, sometimes it really affects people. Like even Raila's demise, people were making very funny until for the first time I had to confront some of them. Yeah, talking about how this man was cursed, and all that. Of course, we know curses are there, but you cannot really encourage parents. In fact, somebody was now saying, "Hey, children, that is a lesson you must learn. Your parent is your second God." And then I actually told them, a parent is not a God. A parent is a steward. A parent is a manager of what God has given him. A parent is not a God. That's not a lesson we can teach any parent, and cursing is not a virtue, and nobody should curse anyone. It is wrong, and it's even worse for Christians to do that, trying to cite Noah. But Christians are not followers of Noah. Christians are followers of Jesus, who did not curse anybody, even on the cross. So I had to confront some of them. They were sending a very, very, and as we talked last time, as we were talking about representation, is the question of, again, what we call othering, where children are otherized because they are what? They are young, you see? And we can also encourage this parent-child binary, where the child now, the father or the mother thinks they can do anything to a child because they are the other. That one, personally, I'm very passionate about children rights. I don't like people who oppress children. Children have to be treated well. Children should not be cursed. If a child has done something wrong, let's correct them according to the laid down laws and regulations. Not cursing, not beating and over, otherizing and marginalizing children. Alafu mnaanza kucheka na sasa mpaka nikasema kama mnasema alikuwa cursed, and you see if Jomo Kenyatta did not curse his, then at the end of the day, who was the loser? Then it was Oginga Odinga who is the loser, because while Kenyatta's son becomes president, Oginga's son does not. So we do not want to. So you are right. Sometimes the things you see in social media. So even us now, what we post there, let's post something encouraging. Let's not wade into conversations that will discourage people, and also a lot of adult talk, yeah, and all that. Maybe what they want to, yeah. So that was Sarah. Mary Ann. Mary Ann, can you say something?
Yes, I think we should have it should be controlled, because not everyone is ethical enough in a community to be able to use it positively. And so to be able to keep people in control, then we should have limits. We should be able to control how people use social media. Also, so that we are able to protect the people who are not able to protect themselves in our society, like the children. I think we should, social media should be controlled.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, to protect children also, yeah. And again, Mary is saying not anyone has the ethical capacity to use it. You are right. Some people don't have any sense of ethics, and they can just post anything. Yeah, they can just post anything, and like when your post is public, anybody can see. Yeah, anybody can see it. So it's something that yeah. So thank you for your contributions. So let's now look at Kenyan situation. The regulation is meant to achieve the following. One, combat hate speech and misinformation. Yeah. And that's why you have the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act 2018. The Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act of 2018 that attempts to give the state legal tools to prosecute individuals for false and malicious online publication. So you can see we already have the law. And so for us, especially at our level, let us not be caught in these things. Let's only publish sense. But as we said during technological determinism, when we were talking about McLuhan, the channel is not the problem. It is how it is used. It is how it is used. Yeah. So there are people who have abused the channel. The problem is not the media itself. It is how it is used. Because like Facebook, yeah, you can use Facebook to advertise your goods. Even the TikTok, you can use it. Yeah. Like TikTok has even very nice videos. Sometimes I use songs there to advertise my book covers. And Gen Zs have been able to, to know me quite well because of that. So it is what you post there. But again, the way we have just said, we need to. Not everyone has the moral capacity to publish what is ethical for public consumption. And then ensuring so that is that Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act of 2018. It is there. And then we have ensuring editorial independence. So regulation is vital to enforce Article 34 of the Constitution, which guarantees press freedom and prohibits state control. So again, the Article 34 of the Constitution, does not allow the government to destroy press freedom. And that's where experts in media also come in, because without press freedom, we cannot go far. And even our careers will be affected. What we are against is that autocratic control. And as I've said, a dictator is a sick person. They cannot tolerate criticism. They cannot, they imagine they are perfect. And yet, most dictators are mediocres. Most of them are failures. And they fear successful people. And that's why most of them use force to get power. They use force to get power. So we are also against that autocratic control. No, we also need to have press freedom of expression, so that we can air our views against what we think is wrong. Of course, we air our views, our divergent views, politely, courteously, assertively, not aggressively, without insulting anybody. Then media ownership and pluralism. So again, these regulations, they do not want a dominant voice in the media space. They protect diversity of the media landscape. That's what we are talking about. So we also don't want to just say it's only MediaMax, or it's only KBC. No, we want to have other media owners, including individuals who just have one person, even with his YouTube channel. That one is also okay, to ensure that we have diverse viewpoints. Like personally, I apart from watching this mainstream media, sometimes I just like watching channels where people are just airing their own views, and they will tell you very, very detailed information about families, about politics. So sometimes that's why this diversity is very important, because what mainstream media may not say, those individuals will just say. And that's why it's important to have that ownership, pluralism. Another topic which is very important is gatekeeping in media. Gatekeeping in media. I think those of us who have published articles, or you want to publish in a newspaper, you see what you go through. Yeah, you see what you go through. You must know the editor, and sometimes you are not sure whether your article will be published or not. So gatekeeping, and for me as a writer, these are things I go through. And even lecturers, when we want to publish our research, there are chief editors in journals, who have been put there to see whether my work is scientific or not. And if it is low quality, it will be thrown away right from the initial preliminary stage of submission. For us, if you want to publish an academic book or a scientific book, you must write a proposal of at least 30 pages. And it has its what? It has its conventions on how it is written. And then the editor, there's an editor there, a journal editor, who will look at your proposal, and if it's low quality, after 3 months, it is thrown away right from the preliminary. So academic writing and journalistic writing are quite similar. Although ours is more rigorous and it takes more time, but journalism is also like that because your article has to be reviewed from preliminary stages before it moves to higher levels for further editing. So, given the influential nature of information, publishing houses have to use certain safeguards to protect the public from harmful content. So, gatekeeping is the process by which information is filtered, selected, and controlled for eventual dissemination to the public. That is White, 1950. So, it determines what news, stories, and information are published or broadcast. And much as we may think that these people are trying to be objective, you will discover that scholars have discovered that have contended that sometimes this process is very subjective. Sometimes it is very subjective, and that's what we are going to see. And that's why, like personally, if my work is rejected, like in journals, I just look for other journals. If this one, you go to another journal and you publish. Don't give up. Try other. If this house rejects your work, because sometimes it may not be about quality of your work. Sometimes it is subjective. Maybe you don't know these people, hawakujui vizuri. Sometimes kuna kitu inaitwa networks, and it's very common in media. Networking. So that if you don't have proper networks, they just throw you away. But sometimes it should not be about networking. We should look at the quality of something. It is not about networking. As a scientist and as a lecturer, I don't believe so much in just you want to publish my book because I'm your friend. No. Look at the quality of my book and see whether it has the right information. So let's focus on the quality, look at the content, not because you are my friend or a colleague. So human life, so let's look at traditional gatekeeping theories. We have one called, there's a gentleman called Kurt Lewin who says that life is a space, that human life is a life space, and the link between individuals and their life space has great influence on their behavior. So that life is a life space, and the link between you and your life space has great influence on your behavior. And so the scholar or the editor defines themselves or defines a life space through identification of the separate parts and how they relate to the life space. So this notion of a life space enables the editor to take the role of the gatekeeper because he or she decides what is included and what is hated in the space. So let's assume the space is Kenya. What is supposed to be included and what is supposed to be rejected in that Kenya. And that space can also be determined by the context. Like now we're talking about the passing of Raila Odinga. What will the editor allow to be published on him, and what will the editor reject to be published on him? And it may also depend on their relationship with Raila Odinga. For example, if the media policy was to marginalize the late, then they are likely to publish very negative stories about him and all that. So that life space is also determined by the context, their policies, the policies of the house, and it will determine what they publish and all that. So the editor becomes a very, very important person as a gatekeeper in a particular house. There's another scholar called Manning White, another scholar called Manning White. He was I think he was a student. He was a student of Lewin. He was a student of the other scholar we have just looked at. So his model established gatekeeping as a linear selection process where the journalist acts as a sequential filter. Maybe before let me see. Is it? Yeah, as a sequential filter. So the editor is a sequential filter. A scholar called the Release expounds that the editor, Mr. Gates, in this particular analogy, is tasked with the duty to select a few articles from the mass he has received. From the mass he has received. Although these stories have already made it through a number of gates and all that, it is he to make the final decision. And over the course of the 7 days, Mr. Gates systematically retains every item of news and annotates each rejected piece with a rationale. Out of the 12,400 column inches of articles, Mr. Gates discards 90% of them. And his stated grounds for exclusion include BS for propaganda, or words like he is too red, or I don't care for suicide stories. Now, look at that last one. If you just say, I don't care for suicide stories, maybe it's just because he hates suicide, but he has not read it well to see why the writer wants to bring out this suicide story. What if the writer wants to discourage suicide? You see? So when you just say, I don't care for suicide stories, that is a very subjective statement. Or you just say he's too red, something like that. Or it could mean maybe he's too angry. Now, is that a criteria you can use? And that's what I'm saying. To some extent, if you look at this, some elements of gatekeeping are associated with subjective decisions. Subjective decisions. And when you become editors, please, let's avoid subjectivity. Let us have a serious criteria. You want maybe the use of language, content and its relevance. Let's avoid maybe if there is decency, public decency. Have a serious criterion. Have a serious criterion for doing what, and stick to that. Don't just come up with something else which is not on the what, which is not on the criterion, and then you use subjectivity to make judgments. Like even as a lecturer, when we are marking, please, we use marking schemes. We use marking schemes. We don't just award marks. There are those conditions that we follow. That is the rubric and what we are supposed to follow. So the marking scheme is very important, or the marking guide, so that you don't just award marks depending on, like now, I don't care for suicide stories. What if that suicide story is discouraging even femicide, which is a very, very powerful theme in our contemporary society? In our contemporary society. So sometimes subjectivity, So the editor determines what information out of vast flow from the wire services is selected, modified, and passed to the public. And that's why we say the editor is a gatekeeper. So the focus is on the editor's subjectivity, their attitudes, expectations, and personal biases. So in this theory, that's one thing that one take home we get in this theory, the editor's subjectivity. Editors, with the time, they get affected by this and they don't realize it. They don't realize it. You work with an editor and you discover he or she has forgotten the rubric and is just throwing words. And personally, being a scientific writer, I'm very keen on that. Personally, when you just come up with something that is not on the marking guide, I will just remind you, if you want that one, then we would have incorporated it in the marking guide, so that we don't end up using subjective views and expectations to determine. And this is the challenge of journalism. It's one of the major challenges in journalism. Some people even receive bribes and they publish stories, you see? And that is again subjectivity. That is not objectivity. And that's why we end up with the brown envelope journalism. Brown envelope journalism. Or maybe somebody just hated you, had a disagreement somewhere, and then he takes advantage of his gatekeeping roles to lock out your story, to lock you out from the media house. So these are the things we want to discourage using that particular theory, using that particular theory by White. Then you have Shoemaker's hierarchy influence model of 1991. So what does Shoemaker say? It says that the gatekeeping is posited not as a capricious or random activity, but as the outcome of intentional decisions guiding content from initial exposure to final dissemination. Content that successfully navigates all preceding filters effectively shapes the minds of new consumers and establishes the public agenda regarding topics deemed important. So it's not just a random activity, gatekeeping, but is an outcome of intentional decisions guiding content from the first stage to the very last. To the very, very last. So to account for the complexity of modern media, Shoemaker, 2009, consolidated existing gatekeeping models into a field theory. They maintain that core constructs, namely gates, gatekeepers, forces, and channels, retain their theoretical utility. So it's a process that moves across. Even the audience has a role in gatekeeping. So information begins by gaining entry into the source channel via input from various actors, including experts, eyewitnesses, participants, commentators, and interested parties. Concurrently, the information enters the media channel through the deliberate actions of personnel such as reporters, editors, production teams, interactive staff, and marketing specialists. These source and media channels ultimately converge to form the body of news content. So gatekeeping is the role of everyone, not just the first person there. It is the role of everyone. Everyone in the process. The audience members also engage in their own selection process from this available content. The audience channel is characterized by the flow of user-generated information captured through platforms like social media feeds, posts, and smartphone cameras. So all that. So it is a structural theory that shows gatekeeping is not one decision, but a continuous process shaped by layered pressures. An editor's decision, for example, is constrained by their organization's policy. So now, so the organization has a policy which will also control the editor. And as you move across, as the article moves towards the end also, that is what the people will say. That is what the people will say. And if they dislike your story, that story may never be repeated again. It may never be repeated. Yeah. So according to Shoemaker, gatekeeping is not just one person's role. It's the role of every member on the chain of media production and publication. And the nation's political system also determines what happens to the text. Yeah. So it is a process that involves everyone. That's according to Shoemaker. Of course, here I'm just explaining a bit to open your eyes, but you'll go on the portal and read everything so that you understand it better. Then you have postmodern or digital gatekeeping theories. Now, in the current world, how is gatekeeping done? So in postmodern or digital theories contend that the concept of a single defined gate has collapsed. That in the present society, you cannot have a single person doing gatekeeping. It has collapsed. Yeah, the process is now nonlinear, algorithmic, and often involves the audience itself. So the audience also gets involved. So gatekeeping shifts from the gatekeepers to the network. So initial gatekeepers, e.g. the journalists, they post to Twitter, which may open the gate, but secondary gatekeepers, e.g. social media users and bloggers, then amplify, comment, and remix the content. Yeah. So the audience becomes part of the selection mechanism through sharing and commenting. You see? So the theory highlights the fragmentation of authority. Mm. So things have changed. Like now, if the content you are creating cannot receive any likes, any likes to the audience, then know that your audience, your content is weak. But if your content can also arouse attention, um, it may suggest that it is valuable content. But now the disadvantage of this sometimes is the question of populism. It's not about quality. It may just be maybe what those people like. But where are the values? What if what people are liking is not even ethical? So it may also open up for compromise of certain ethical standards. Because even if Gen Zs may like your content, it may not necessarily be the most, it may not say that it is the right thing you are doing. You may be popular but not famous. You may be popular but not famous. As in, where is the ethical consideration? Where is the ethical consideration? Where are the morals? So there is fragmentation of authority. Traditional media still matter, but their control is diluted by viral dynamics and sheer volume of content. So this leads to both greater pluralism and greater difficulty in maintaining shared truth and quality standards. So it's very difficult to maintain quality standards now. It is very difficult to maintain quality standards. Anybody can come up with anything and reach out to the market. Then you have algorithmic gatekeeping. This posting that human discretion is being replaced by machine logic on platforms like Google, Facebook, and TikTok. Algorithms, code-based filters designed to optimize user engagement and personalization or advertising revenue now decide what content reaches billions of users. So machines, the algorithm, machines are now being used to determine which content can reach a larger audience and which content cannot. So things are very mathematical. And those of you who know how to produce viral videos, I know you can help us here. That is what that is what you are supposed to do. And some people say that once you have produced a video, don't delete it. Don't delete it, because with the time, the algorithm is working on it. He's still working on it. He's still working on it. And then with the time, they just reach a time and it moves. But these ones are very automated, and there are machines now that determine which content should reach a larger audience. So the rules used are mathematical, designed to optimize specific metrics such as user engagement and advertising revenue. And sometimes also when you pay, your video will also be advertised to more specific audiences, and then it will be able to help you move. So machines. But if I may ask, are these machines able to understand? Are they able to understand ethical issues? Maybe those who have some experience with algorithmic gatekeeping. Are these computer applications able to understand ethical issues affecting us? Or because they are made by human beings, they have been programmed to understand ethical issues? Mtu aniambie kitu hapo. Those of you have some experience, those of you have some experience with the algorithms. Do they accept unethical content? Do they accept unethical content? Somebody? Are they able to recognize unethical content when you are uploading? Even AI, those of you who have used AI for some time, how does AI react when you try to tell it to draw something unethical? Someone? Anybody who has some experience? Anyone who has some experience? Are they able to identify unethical content?
I think
Yes.
there it depends on how they are trained, because they
Yes.
could be trained
Mm.
to recognize unethical content in English. So if you post it maybe in Kiswahili or in another local language, it may not be able to recognize that this is unethical.
They will not recognize, eh? But if you use English, they will recognize, isn't it?
Yes, they may recognize and flag it.
One time I told Gemini to draw something for me. I wanted Gemini to draw a needle injected in a human head, It refused. Eh? It told me I cannot draw that because that is harmful content. Why should I draw um a sharp object? Yeah. But I wanted to use it as an just an analogy of something, and it refused. So they are able to. It depends on how they are. They are programmed, because they are programmed, and those who assemble them, those software engineers who assemble them, they follow these ethical rules. But there's what Natalia has said. If it's another language, they will not understand. So these ones are automated. So there are other notes you will go and read. This is just something to open your eyes. I'm not supposed to teach you everything here. I'm supposed to just open your eyes so that you go and read. We may have a second. I may suggest a second cut very soon. We have done the first one. I know you are not able, anybody who was able to see Max. Were you able to see Max? Natalia told me she had not seen anything. But I promised to show you Part 1 Max. But I've been so busy. So if we do up to 4, the exam should be out of 60. I think the exam should be out of 60. Then we do 4, but maybe next week I will confirm whether the exam is out of 60. Yeah, you people, I think you people assessment is out of 40 and the exam is out of 60. So we have only done one. So this week we must do another one, and I may look for another one. Okay, I'll look for an activity to show you. Then I will look for one more so that we get the total out of 40. The exam is out of 60. Any question? So today we had to attend because we are 1 week behind. Remember, the first week we did not learn. So because of that, we are 1 week behind. So I did not deem it appropriate to miss. And I wish to appreciate your sacrifice because it's a holiday. But I think only Leah has not come. And Bob, is it? And Bob. The rest have come, and let me thank you for that. Yeah, let's be ready to sacrifice so that when we finish early, we have 10 sessions, and this is session 6, so we have 4 more. So once we finish the 10, you will now be free to go and revise for your exams. And it's good with hard work, we'll be able to finish at the right time to enable us prepare for the exams. The exam will be face to face, so even those of you who are far, prepare. I think 801 it must be on. Is it 4th or 1st? I don't know. Have you seen CJM 801? No? the timetable. Is it first or fourth? Mm. Yeah, so thank you for attending, and if you have no question, we wish you a nice evening. Yes, we can now leave at our own leisure.